we're back for another episode of Self-Directed. I'm excited to talk about one of my personal favorite topics today with somebody who I know cares a lot about this. We've got Jason Campbell on, who has been with Mindvalley for a long time. He's host of Impact at Work interview series, Superhumans at Work. He's doing a lot of cool things, has an awesome career story. We're going to dive into that and talk a lot about sales, which is a topic that I think his career has given him a lot of different insights into. So Jason, welcome to Self-Directed.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you bet. So let's just start with what you do now. Like what's kind of, your day-to-day role and capacity at Mindvalley? What are you working on today?
Got it. Well, first off, Mindvalley, personal growth education company. We're all about, getting people to live the best version of themselves. I personally run a role in here where I do a lot of deals with authors. So if somebody's doing a course, let's say on meditation or productivity, I'll look at ways that I can deal with the customers we generate for them as a publishing company. And then I'll make sure that we can do some deals where the customers go back to them and do some what we call back-end deals. So I like negotiating through that. But most of my time is actually spent recording podcasts myself. I also record a YouTube series that's coming out soon. By the time this podcast is out, it's probably already going to be out there. But
that's awesome.
Anything that has to do with professional growth is the topics that I like to cover, where it's like leadership, sales, etc. And the things that I do outside Mindvalley right now is actually writing the book on selling with love, which is a lot of the concepts we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'll link to if that YouTube course comes out before, I'll have to link to that. And then, I've got a couple of your videos and things we're talking about, the ideas behind the book more. I'll link to those. But let's rewind in time. I want to hear, where did it all begin for you in terms of like, when did you learn you had an interest in sales? When did your career start for you? I think that we all have different kind of starting points for when we started thinking about our lives as careers, but like, when was that for you?
Well, I'll start a bit more recently, where I had a moment where I started realizing, wow, I'm growing up pretty fast. I was at a mastermind dinner. It was actually last night. And as we're going around the table, I'm realizing I'm a 32-year-old man, and everyone around the table were around 29 as an average age. I'm like, wow, like there's a new blood of people that are coming up, and there's some of them that are even in their mid-20s. And I'm like, I'm loving the hustle. I'm loving seeing the energy that's coming from people that actually have access to so much material and resources that are available online. And so I started reflecting on my own career path in the process. And I realized I went through my own little adventures. And so if you ask me, where did the sales start? I mean, if you think of most people, when they look at sales, it usually comes with like a negative association.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
You think used car salesman, right? That's usually the first thing that comes into people's mind. Although now you're going to see a little more of the kind of tempting salesperson roles. You'll see things like The Wolf of Wall Street. If anybody's watched that movie, you're like,
yeah, everybody. I think that's our generation has definitely watched that.
Right.
And who didn't want to be a stockbroker for like 15 minutes,
That's the thing, right? So we all had like, oh, that looks exciting. But then you sense and you feel that emotionally there's something wrong about it. There's something that feels manipulative. There's something that feels like it takes advantage of people. And so those are a lot of the negative associations. I had a lucky story, and I'd have to say I was 16 years old when this happened. And it's a basic sales story, but it definitely gave me a different belief from the start. Probably why I'm writing a book about selling with love. But I remember I was doing this charity drive for my school. So I'm in high school, and they had you sell these like chocolate covered almonds. And you had to go like door to door, and you were selling like these $2 chocolate bars to your neighbors, and then you were raising funds for whatever was the case of the time. So I went to the first neighbor and I was like, hey, do you want to buy some chocolate? And then they're just like, chocolate, great, I'd love to. They give me $2, they buy the chocolate. I'm like, wow, selling makes people happy. I like that. And I think it was by the 7th door, I go and knock, and the person's like, hi, can I help you? Hey, do you want to buy some chocolate? I mean, nothing sophisticated on the sales process here. I'm just telling people, I have chocolate. They're like, I have money. We can trade. But this lady did something different. She said, oh, let me see if my daughter wants any. And then she calls down her daughter and her friend, who ends up being 15 years old. And that lady ended up becoming my first girlfriend.
That's amazing.
And so I was like, wow, selling got me a girlfriend.
Selling rocks.
I love it.
That's amazing.
So I love that story because I realized like I immediately had a positive anchor and a positive story around like sales. And following that, I ended up working in a pool store and I was selling pools, and people were like, wow, Jason's a little enthusiastic when it comes to selling swimming pools. But I just had this natural knack. I would get excited about anything that I sell. Like I would study the product really deeply, and I'd be like, oh my God, do you understand what's about to happen? You're sitting at a table with me here and you're about to have the most cool backyard you've ever had in your life. Like, this is what we're talking about. People will be like, oh, I just came to buy steel, but you're giving me hopes and dreams. This is amazing.
That's amazing.
And so as I continued through the years, you know, if I think of when I went to university, I went to study management, but I remember being at a point where I had no clue what I wanted to do in life. Like I was looking at
welcome to the club. I think who didn't have that moment too.
I thought it was just me at the time. I was like, wow, all my smart friends, they seem to have like they're becoming accountants, like the people that went in the accounting path were going there. People in the finance path were going there. I was going in management and I was like, and I think a lot of the listeners might be relating to this, where it's like, you went to study something and you're like, shit, what's available for that? I ended up going into the job fair, and there was these management trainee programs, and they were like, yes, so within 5 years, you might be making, $50,000 as one of our seniors. And I was like, that's not what I want.
The math does not work out for this.
No. I'm like, my abundance mindset is in conflict with this rule. And I have to admit, I got a little lucky. I ended up getting a job in real estate. And when I got there, I thought it'd be more like, seeing homes and everything. And the person's like, no, you don't need to be a broker. All you're going to do is pick up the phone and call people, and you're going to book appointments for realtors. And I was like,
wait a second. Yeah.
This sounds like telemarketing. He's like, no. It's reverse prospecting. I'm like, fancy term unknown to me. Let me inquire. He was a good salesman too. But in essence, is people were generating leads online and they needed somebody to call them. And it was a beautiful system. First call I ever made, I was shaking so much that I ended up like trembling in my voice too. And the person hung up on me after I said my first line in the script. And I was like, nope, it was all a lie. I am a
sales
telemarketer.
Sucks. Yeah.
Sales sucks. I can't do this. And then it was funny because the boss walked in right after that call, and like I'm already very pasty white. And I was even paler at this point. And he's like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I can do it. He's like, this is not how it usually works. I swear. I'm like, you're lying. He's like, no. Do a couple more. You'll see it's fine. And then this was interesting because I realized that it wasn't sales that I hated. It was being rejected that I hated.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
Right. And so the lesson I had here was just like, wow, okay. I started calling again, and I was like, why is it personally affecting me that someone says no to what I pitch? Like, I feel like when someone says no to what I pitch, is they're saying no to me as a human being. And I was like, that's stupid. Like, you look at it objectively, you're like, no, they just didn't want the product or service I wanted at the time. Fast forward a couple months in this job, I'm cranking out 100 calls a day, and I'm following the script. Hi, this is Jason from ABC Real Estate. Just letting you know, I received your home evaluation. You'll get that in the mail next 24 hours. Is that okay? People are like, whoa, amazing. You're giving me value. And then script, I'd be like, do this, do that, do that. And it would qualify them. It would get me everything. And at the end, I would pitch. I would know how to handle objections. And I turned into a machine. And I was like, wow, the rejection didn't matter because it was a numbers game.
Yep.
And then I realized, like, wow, what I ended up doing is people that were looking to buy a home or sell a home, I would use the necessary process required for them to understand the value of what we provided, so that they could get the best realtor to help them out in the process. I was like, I was really confident about the product. And I think there's a clue here as well.
Yeah.
I remember this one lady, I think I called her 27 times.
Oh my gosh.
Most people are like, wow, poor lady, Jason, you're such a harasser. Fact is, when the realtor finally went to see her home to evaluate it, she decided to list, and she sold her home top dollar. And then they do a survey and they're like, hey, what made you decide to do business with us? She's like, I don't know what it was. This kid called me like 27 times to just try to get this appointment. If you're going to put that much effort to do business with me, I know you're going to sell my home.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so to me, like, sales become a way of caring for people. And
you could have stopped at call number 26 and never had that happen.
Exactly. And most people stop after call 2.
Yeah.
And the average sales happens after 5 to 7 outreaches. And even today, more than ever, like, I have a lot of my friends, especially my girlfriend, actually, she's like, wow, I'm trying to make plans with somebody. I suggest something, they say no. And then I guess they don't like me. And I'm like, no. How many times did you follow up to make those plans? We seem to think that we just need to reach out to friends and colleagues, or, you want to build a network of people that are with you. Be the one that follows up 5 times, that suggests 5 plans. People look at me and they're like, Jason, how come you know so many people around the world? Why are you such a networker? To me, it's like, I'll put energy required for relationships to thrive. And sales is an important part of that.
Yeah.
And it's not feeling the need. Like when someone says no to your plans, it's not because they reject you personally. It's because you want to be able to be the one that's actually okay with following up multiple times, realizing that's what's required today, because we're so distracted. We're all over the place. There's so many things, and people are always trying to optimize their plans, and people are flaky. Don't be that person.
Yeah.
Be the person that's very excited about doing this and continuously following up. You'll be the most respected in person, most connected in no time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you brought up couple big things, like first and foremost, like one, getting past the fear of rejection, which is awesome. Number 2, recognizing that it's like you're executing a process in order to deliver value. So, which both of those I think are like, if you can make those hurdles in your sales career, like congratulations, you've just unlocked like 75% of the secrets to like you're now at the level where you can start really learning about sales. But I think everybody has to get over those the first hurdle for sure. Like you're not saying no to me, you're saying no to whatever you think I'm selling or whatever. So where'd it go from there? Where did your sales career evolve from there?
I really love how you put it, because that's exactly it. Like I could go to somebody and teach them the best technique on how to close. But if you feel that you're a dirty salesperson every time you close, then you're literally sabotaging yourself through every sale. So you need to remove those blocks and create that new story. So from there, I ended up starting my own company. And this, again, there was a sale involved here. I ended up going to this seminar that was all about buying real estate. I wanted to become a real estate investor. I got sold, and I was okay with that.
Did you read Rich Dad Poor Dad first?
I did reach that Poor Dad. And, I started learning a bit about real estate, got really excited about it. And I was just graduated university. I was doing the telephone sales. Yeah. Obviously, this was not going to be my lifelong career, had my learnings. And then I wanted to move to something bigger. And I got together with my 2 best friends. A sale again was involved. I went to them. I'm like, we're going to take advantage of the greatest opportunity that's ever happened to our generation, and I want both of you to come along with me. They're like, what are we doing? I don't care. I'm in.
This sounds amazing. I just graduated college, don't have a job, of course I'm in. Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And so I had one of my buddies relocate to Florida, and we basically started buying Florida condos in 2010. Now, for those who might not remember 2010 as much, this was the Great Recession.
Yeah.
This is when all the properties started foreclosing in America. Everybody was not touching real estate with a 10-foot pole. A lot of people needed a property to rent and to have as a home. And so what we did is we went in, we started renovating properties that we acquired, and then we put tenants in place, and then we sold them back as investment properties for Canadians. So Canada was actually doing quite well during those times. I'm from Canada. So we went in, added value, packaged it, sold it back. And it was really interesting because in hindsight, I look at how I did things there, which was really cool, because I'd go to people saying, hey, don't leave your money in the bank where there's just going to give you 1-2% interest rate. You can buy these properties cash flow at around 10%. And then once the market comes back, you'll be able to sell that property that used to sell for $250,000. Well, you're buying it for $50,000 now. It's hopefully at least got to go back to 100, and you're going to be the one pocketing that money. So it made a very logical sale.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I didn't stay in this venture very long. I ended up learning a lot of things. Oh my God, this was a story in itself, because I ended up learning everything. It was kind of like an equivalent of Trump University. I don't know if you know about that, but it's basically, I went into a room, it was seminar guys, and we were working with contractors from America. These guys taught me some really interesting things in sales that I would like to label as the dark sides of sales. Like they'd be the types of Americans that would be like, hey man, nobody buys a steak when they go to a steakhouse. They go there for the smell and the sizzle. You got to sell the sizzle. Sizzle's all you got to sell. Just go to these people, talk about cash on cash. When people hear cash twice, they want to buy more shit. So let's go. And I was like, damn, that's Wolf of Wall Street stuff right there. Yeah. I want it. And so there was a maturity level I had to go through here, because what happened is everything they taught me from the transactional process of real estate was pretty sketchy.
Yeah.
I ended up going through probably the hardest time emotionally in my life. This was like a depression caused by stress, because I realized I had $500,000 worth of property under contract, and they had promised that they were going to be funding all the deals that we had, and the person supposed to fund it disappeared.
Oh gosh.
And then I realized
you were how old? Like 22, maybe early 20s?
Yeah, I was 22.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to read the tax codes. I had to read, like, I blessed that I was able to find some amazing individuals, such as a title agent, Tony Singleton, that I absolutely love. Took me in her room. She's like, everything's going to be okay. She explained me how the real estate process works in the legit way. I had some tax advisors and accountants that were like, let us walk through this. I read the US tax codes about how foreign nationals can actually own real estate. And I never studied so many things around aliens, but that's how they call non-Americans that buy real estate. I'm like, okay. It was tough times. I'm not going to lie. And it's interesting because I can look at this story in two ways. Like, one, like, very young and unaware, Jason looks at it and says, wow, these Americans took advantage of me. They screwed me over. I went through a depression. This was really shitty. But instead, I chose it into a different story, which I'm the one who gets to control the story. And the story I tell myself is, wow, these people believed in me so much. They knew they needed to throw me so deep in the ocean. They knew I could swim back.
Yeah. And hey, and whether that's true or not, like, that's taking ownership. Like, I love that. It's like, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to take control. I love I always like to call it like the lies we tell ourselves. Like, sometimes you do have to manufacture a lie to like regain control of the narrative. So I love that.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I love the fact that you brought up the victimhood, because I think a lot of people, they can look at the world and say, oh, wow, that happened. And, poor me, where instead it's like, oh, that happened, opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's really how I looked at it. So I ended up finding buyers for each of those properties. And I'm not going to lie, Mitchell, I think I did some of the dodgiest stuff I've done in my life, but I had one intention in mind, is I really cared for the people I was about to sell to. And I knew I was going to make things right. And so this was a big value I had from the start. And so I remember at some point, I'm just doing contracts, and these are templates I'm creating. I mean, there's probably typos on these contracts, but I'm getting people to wire money into different accounts. And so I was using the money that they were using to buy the property that wasn't ready, that I didn't own yet, but then I ended up buying it with those funds and having a contract with and so maybe in retrospective, that was not too smart, but at the same time, I had the intention of really serving, and I made everything right in the end. So everybody owned their properties fair and square, with the right insurance, with the right properties, with a great tenant. And a lot of people ended up making some good monies through that. And we ended up selling all those properties. But what was interesting is I actually got acquired. So the person that was designing these educational materials said, Jason, you went through so much stuff. You now are the person that probably knows the most about this topic. So they brought me in. I designed a material on how to transact US real estate, how to raise money from investors. I ended up really running and speaking on stage in the process. And that was kind of the next stage of my career, is I ended up being an educator and a speaker on the topics of real estate, raising money, sales. And I got to make sure that nobody else had to go through the same pain that I did by dealing with some people taking advantage of them. And
all because you took a leap. Like a few years ago, you had no idea. You were sitting in school like, management, what's that going to turn into? Now you're like down a very serendipitous path. Like, not only did I figure this stuff, like, and back to the victim thing, if you would have just been like, I got taken advantage of and pivoted, like, you wouldn't have, that next opportunity would have existed. So that's cool. Now I got to hear that, like, where did this unfold to? So continue down the path. So I did that for a while, but then I felt like the company was not doing, they were starting to have a taste for money that I thought was going towards a more not so black and white direction. And I was at this point really lucky. I was actually, I ended up reading a book that I know a lot of your listeners have probably picked up at some point, called The 4-Hour Workweek. Oh yeah. And as I was working for this company, I decided to have a conversation with my boss. I was one of the highest paid employees in the company, which seems to happen a lot every time I get a job. But I end up, not a bad skill to have. Not a bad skill to have. And also because I understand that every year is a moment of negotiation. Yeah. Like I remember when I got acquired, I said, like, okay, I want a 6-figure salary. I want to make sure you give me a car too. And they're like, a car? I'm like, yeah, it's cheaper for you to give me a car than pay me $120,000. So just give me a car. And they're like, oh, okay. So I had a car. It was cool. Anyways, so I went to sit with him again at that year point where he knew I was about to come and ask for more money. And
I said to him, I want to talk about my salary. He's like, Jason, like, geez, you're like 22 or 23. I think it was 23 at the time, 23. He's like, you're making a 6-figure income and you want more and you're 23 years old. Like, what do you want? And I said, actually, that's why I think it's an important conversation to have is I want you to pay me less.
Yep.
And he's like, keep going. And I'm like, actually, I'd love you to pay me half. He's like, keep going. I'm like, pay me half and let me work from home. And this obviously is pre-corona.
Yeah.
And so the idea of working from home is like just this really weird concept.
Very novel. Yeah.
I'm like, let me, this would have been 2012, I believe. I'm like, let me work from home and I'll deliver the same work. Don't count my hours, but pay me half and see how this works. He's like, okay. And so in the process, I did a couple of things. One is I built systems to automate most of my work, and I moved to Thailand. And when I moved to Thailand, my cost of living was 1/3. And so you can do the math. Yep. I actually ended up making more money than living by relocating to Thailand, which I went to school as an exchange when I was 20. So I had a lot of friends and colleagues there. So I was like, this place is familiar. I know how it works. So I ended up staying there for about 6 months, working for that company. But in the process, I had a really, I'll take a moment from there because I ended up doing the work and I took on clients while I was doing this work where I was actually personally coaching other people to build their real estate business, where as I was being paid as a contractor for the coaching, I ended up matching my salary from before. So I was still at 6-figure, but I was working 4 hours to 8 hours a week and my cost of living was nothing. So I had a beautiful home. And now I'm at this point, I'm 24. I'm making good money. I'm meeting a ton of friends, traveling the world. Life's good. And at that point, there was a part of me that was like, well, this is great. I've achieved this. What's next? Yeah. And I realized that the next drive was like, what do I want to create? Like, what's the impact I want to make in the world? And that was I was having a conversation with an old colleague. His name's Colton Swab. And we were talking about the concept of freedom, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because he divided it into 2 ways, which I love telling the story, which is there's 2 types of freedom. There's the freedom to, which is a destination, like financial freedom. Like, I want to have freedom. So I have freedom to do what I want, work the number of hours I want, have the cars, have the house and have the clothes. Like you're trying to seek a certain freedom, right? So your freedom to. Once you reach it, then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I need to flip this up. It's freedom from. You want freedom from the obligations and limitations that money have. You want freedom to do the impact you want to make in the world. And so that's, once you reach that abundance state, you're like, oh, okay, I have money. I'm not doing much. What am I, a dead weight to the world? No. What do I want to do to create impact in the world? And that's when I discovered Mindvalley.
That's awesome. So where did you start at Mindvalley? How early was it? Like, where did you come in at that stage? I know now, like, much larger, you have a big reach, but where was it when you came on board?
Well, it was funny because when I joined Mindvalley, I had no idea what they sold. I'm a person who's never meditated in their life. I'm basically one of those, sales, like nice smile, really negotiate, quick talking, like designing processes type of person. And I got hired at Mindvalley without knowing what a single product they sold. And I ended up going to their event. They made me do a meditation. I'm like, what? Isn't that just monks? I'm not a monk. What is this? They taught me about like the law of attraction, power of visualization. And I was like, this is all new to me. And then I read back. I'm like, no, wait, it's not. One of the first books I read when I was 20 was Think and Grow Rich.
Yep. Napoleon Hill.
And I didn't realize at the time that was the industry. So when I got into Mindvalley, it was just starting to be a brand. They had just launched the Mindvalley Academy. And I just went through I was having a tea with a friend and he's like, so what did you do in Mindvalley? And so, not to bore your audience, I'll walk through this really quickly, is I ended up being a product launch manager. That's what I was hired for, launching new products. And it's funny because when I first applied for a job, I was a product development expert. And the person interviewing me, one of the senior partners, like, so do you know what you're going to do on this job? I'm like, not really sure, but I think I'll end up, developing products, finding market fit, doing some cool things. At the end, he's like, actually, that's not at all what you would do. And matter of fact, since we've talked so far, I think you'd be terrible at the job you applied for. And
thanks for the brutal feedback. Yeah.
Right. And then I was like, but to me, like, the fear of rejection had already been removed from my experience in sales. So my answer was just like, oh, well, that's great. So tell me which job I should be applying for.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I think you'd be a good marketer. And so I ended up joining the product launch team. I launched our first product, was Healing School, which was great. It was all about like energetic healing. I thought it was a really cool field. But I only lasted in that job for 3 weeks, because 3 weeks into Mindvalley, they're like, hey, the head of entrepreneurship is actually stepping down. We need somebody to take up their role. And I just walked up to Vishen Lakhiani, who's the founder CEO of Mindvalley. I'm like, hey, Vishen, I know you just announced this position. I started 3 weeks ago, but I don't think there's anybody as good as me to take on that position.
Bold.
Yeah. And bold brings a lot of cool opportunities.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I need to thank, again, those mentors that screwed me over, is they did teach me one quote that I really like, which is called ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you're, especially in your 20s, like, take the shots boldly. Yeah, you'll fail, but God, like this quote, I forget who says it, is aim for the stars. If you still end up on the moon, you're still good. Yeah. And so I ended up getting the job as a head of entrepreneurship, ran a blog, ran a product. When I was outside, I thought this product, like, it was called Zentrepreneur. I was like, oh, is this like a $30,000 mastermind? They're like, no, it's a $2,000 mastermind. I'm like, oh, you guys are ridiculous. And they're like, well, we just want to make it accessible to everybody else. I'm like, no, you're just afraid of your own value. I'm like, you need to make this $7,000. And they're like, isn't that too much money? I'm like, how dare you? Yeah. How dare you take away the margins that we need to create an extraordinary experience for these people?
Yeah. And that's a great way to look at it too, though.
People never thought of it that way. I'm like, now that we have 7,000, like, increase the budget for the event. Let's give them more value. Let's increase the number of calls. Let's make sure they have concierge service. Like, add in the features so that the product you don't need to discount. Instead, you can add more value. And this is actually one of the concepts I talk in my book, is most people, when they look at the price of something, they're like, the product's maybe not as good as I think it's costing, so I'm just going to reduce the price to feel better about it, which is all your own mental game. And I tell people, why don't you do this? Imagine your product is 10 times more expensive. Now think of what you need to add to the product so you can step into a space of creation to make it work.
That's amazing. I love that. This is something I think I had to learn the hard way too, like going through a lot of different rocky twists and turns in sales as well, and then getting into marketing. But just like, I think there's a tendency when you're selling in particular, like you're dealing with a lot of people, they get interested in your product or whatever you have. And then they're like, I want to know the cost. And like, I think when you're just starting out in sales, it's this tendency to be like, okay, I got to give them the cost. That's what they want now. And like, you just spill out a number and you kind of do that sheepishly, like you're ready to give a discount or whatever it is to keep it on the reel. And now it's like, now my philosophy is like, never talk cost without value. Like you can't like, especially if you have a product that's on the more expensive side, like you have to articulate the value. I love what you said though, is like, let's set the price point and figure out what we have to do to make it worth that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I also think like a question of abundance of business makes you more secure about your price. If you had 1,000 leads knocking at the door asking for doing business with you, you'd tell them this is the price. You'd probably make it more so that the people that aren't going to buy are going to walk away. Yeah. So there's kind of a catch-22, but I love the idea that if someone asks for the price, sometimes you could be like, okay, if I told you it was free, would you still take it? They're like, well, I don't even know what it is. Well, that's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did this for a while. I created Mindvalley's first subscription program. So I talked to them about subscription revenue. I said, hey, I need to build a team. I want to know how much money's coming every month. I want that to be predictable so I can afford the payroll on my team. So I started the first subscription. Then they're like, we were all doing transaction at the time. They're like, what's this recurring revenue? This is amazing. So we started creating more. I helped launch Vishen's brand and his first product. So before, Vishen was kind of the CEO tech entrepreneur, and we're like, no, Vishen, you're the face of Mindvalley. Like, you're the man. Like, you need to launch a product. He's like, I don't know. We're like, no, we know. Let's launch you. So he created his first product called Becoming Limitless. I helped run the PR campaign around the launch of his first book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. Now he just wrote his second book called The Buddha and the Badass, which just came out recently, which is amazing too. I ended up launching Soulvana, which was Mindvalley's first spiritual vertical. We did a concept called Mindvalley University, which is a seminar that lasts 1 month for 1,000 people coming together in a new city. So I helped launch the first one of that. And so I ended up working on a lot of different projects at Mindvalley. And And eventually I just became more of a host than an employee in the process, and getting to do interviews, sharing my content, sharing ideas and the philosophies is really what we're excited about now. So that would be the journey in a nutshell.
Yeah. Kind of taking that full journey to the freedom from era,
So coming back to that is now I got to do a lot of things that were quite impactful. I mean, I remember when I first decided like, hey, do I want to be an employee again? It was like, hey, this bus is exciting. It's going places. And Vishen's a crazy individual, but I like his driving style. And I was like, I'm going to ride this so I can learn, I can grow. Obviously there was some financial, perks of having, a steady income and things that I did. Like entrepreneurship has calculated risk methodologies. I'm a very calculated person. And so I like the ideas of the opportunities it brought, the connections. And so if I'm in my 20s, like that's your risk-taking time. Like go learn stuff, follow some really bold visionaries, go take jobs that align with your values, and develop your sales skills is what I think is the most important skills you can develop, because that is literally the key that can get you everything you want in your life. Like if you think of everything that you value today, it is there because somebody sold a deal to someone else to make that creation. Railroads, planes, cars, automobiles. I mean, Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken, you are American, right?
Yep.
Americans have one skill that they typically have by default, which is this amazing salesmanship. I think people don't forget about how amazing the American culture has to nurture amazing salespeople. And it's not so surprised that you go around the world, there's American equipments and partnerships everywhere. I think it's a testament to that beautiful skill. It's not to be undervalued, and it can be done in a beautiful way when you do it from a place of love. And that comes from knowing the impact you make every time you make the sale, knowing the people that you're selling to and why you want their lives to be better, and understanding who they are so you can sell property, loving the product that you sell because you know that product changes lives. And if it's not the right product, fix it or make it better, but don't fake it. It's going to come back and bite you. And if you did mess up a bit, it's okay. You're young, and just do your best to make it right.
Or go sell something different.
So go sell something different. If you see that it's not the right thing, there's tons of things that can sell, and it's one of the most in-demand skills right now. One of the biggest ones, especially when you've released the blockchain on sales and looked at, hey, Elon Musk's and all these other role models you could look like, they're all salespeople too. And you can look up the great models and be like, wow, being a salesperson is a good thing. And so love the process of selling, knowing that process of selling, whether it's closing tactics, prospecting, scripts, they're all the tools necessary to show empathy for the emotional side of the people that you're selling to, so that they can truly understand the value of what you're going to give to them. So it's not about you, it's about them. And so there's specific tools to use so to make sure you actually get to help them convert and understand.
I love that. I always talk about it as like, your goal is to get to the double thank you. The one where we both walk away like happy that we just did business. Like that's the sweet spot of sales. When you miss that mark though, like, man, that's where you're like, as a consumer, you're like, shit, like, nah, I didn't really want to spend that much money on this thing. Like there's a mismatch between your expectations and the value you got and the cost. Or on the flip side, like when you're selling something, you're like, and you could, like if you've been in sales long enough, when you do those deals, when you, like somebody else wasn't getting the perceived value you wanted out of it. That's usually, and I think about my own past, like that's where it's like, I'm just in the wrong job. I'm selling the wrong thing.
I mean, I've done sales that I regret. I mean, and I think that kind of closes this off pretty well, because that's the last love. Like I talk about 5 loves in selling that I just listed here. The last one is really self-love. And the self-love aspect is like the cheesiest. And like if I'm talking to some 20-year-old and telling you like what's missing is self-love.
You got to love yourself, man.
Here's what I mean by love yourself is have empathy and compassion for yourself to understand that the only thing you ever do is your best. That's the only operating function you have as a human being. This comes from the wisdoms of the 4 agreement, Toltec wisdom. They talk about always do your best because that's all you ever do. And so I've made sales I've regretted. I've done my best to make them right, but I also have an understanding that we all have a lesson to go through. We all have learnings to go through. And the best part is as you step into abundance while doing sales the right way, you become a role model for other people to understand that sales is a good thing. It can bring abundance for you. It can bring abundance for your community. It can bring abundance for the world. you raise the tide for everybody else when you step into your greatness and sell. So whether it's about getting that job, whether it's about selling directly a product or service, whether it's finding a boyfriend, girlfriend, like all of them are sales process. And if you just keep working on yourself, being the best version of yourself, you're going to make sure that you're making the world a better place. And I think that's a beautiful place to start selling from.
That's awesome. You sold me on sales. I think I was already there, but that's awesome. So the last question for you is just when can we expect the new book coming out?
My target's to have it out by December. And so I just started editing. And for those of you who want to have, I don't know if you're like, I have a cheat sheet on sales that I can send to you. If you want to grab it from me on Instagram, they can just hit me up as well.
Awesome. All right, Jason, man, it's been a pleasure. Always love talking sales. So I'll add some links to that, and can't wait to feature this. It's been another episode of Self-Directed, and stay tuned for next time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet.